Location, location, location. Where is the best place to ride out the end of the world as we know it? Let's talk about it. Strategic location is a term which was popularized by Joel Kuzin, who wrote a book entitled as such. And the book is all about where should you live if the crap is going to hit the fan. If you want to pick up a copy of the book, I'll post a link in the description. Now, the main strategy of the book seems to evolve around positioning yourself away from people. Unfortunately, and even Joel himself agrees, that's not always a practical thing to do. We're going to talk about the reasons why in a minute. But before we get into that, let's just talk in general about the different climates, the different biomes of the world, and which ones would be ideal for a long-term grid down scenario. You're going to come to find that no matter where you are on the planet Earth, there's going to be pros and cons. It doesn't matter if you're in the far Arctic with the musk oxen and the reindeer, or if you're on a tropical island. Indeed, there are pros and cons to every place, but those pros and cons become much less evenly weighted when we take out the human factor. We'll talk about that in a minute. Let's first talk about the different areas. So consider a place like northern Canada. Lots of hunting opportunities. Very low population density. Unfortunately, it's incredibly cold. You're going to be faced with the threat of wildfires, and there's an incredibly short growing season. What about a coastal area like the Pacific Northwest? It must be the perfect survivalist retreat. You got a mild climate year-round, temperate rainforest. You have, a longer growing season. You have very old growth forests, enough old growth forests to keep yourself warm for years and years and to use those materials for years. But you also have the potential tectonic activity. You have a much higher population density. You have the potential for tsunamis. Even though those things are rare, still possibilities. The other problem, which is a really practical one, is that buying land there is going to be very expensive because everybody wants it, because while the grid is up, that's a really great place to live. So what about laying anchor in the desert for a bug out location? It's incredibly remote, there's low population density, there's great opportunities for solar power installation. You're never going to have to worry about marauders and human threats coming onto your property. But you have the issue of water. And of course, the lack of resources. There's not going to be a lot of things to hunt in the desert. There's not going to be a lot of water unless you find some kind of underground aquifer or some oasis or something like that to put your property on, which is going to be quite rare. And of course, from a practical standpoint, you're not going to be close to the amenities of the city. So if you have children, if you have people who need medical care, you're not going to be able to get it if you're that far removed from civilization. So how about a tropical island? That must be the perfect ideal place for a crap hits the fan scenario. I mean, you have abundant resources, you have a bunch of fish in the sea, you have great weather, well, for the most part, until the 2 or 3 hurricanes come through every year and totally destroy whatever, property you've built up or made. So you'd constantly be rebuilding stuff, or having to retreat to some sort of cave every time one of these cyclones or hurricanes came through. And then of course you also still have the issue of pirates, and you still have the issue of how the hell are you going to afford to buy your own island. And if you don't have your own island, then you're just living somewhere in the islands in the Caribbean, then I guess you're sharing that island with hundreds of thousands of other people as well. And when times get tight, well, we all know what happened on Easter Island. Well, what about California as a place to retreat? It has an incredibly diverse landscape, mountainous regions, old growth forest, tropical, everything you could possibly want from an environmental standpoint. They produce the most fresh produce in North America. They basically feed North America throughout the wintertime in terms of delivering fruits and vegetables. They have a great climate year-round. It's warm. But of course, there is that issue of it being highly densely populated. In fact, one of the most densely populated regions in the world. And of course, you have the issue of wildfires and just the simple fact that there's not a very large preparedness culture there So people would be pretty desperate when it came down to it. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, Northern California is the place to be because it has pretty much a lot of everything and it doesn't have the high population density. If you don't think that there's going to be people, thousands, if not millions of them, who can afford the full tank of gas to get up to Northern California to retreat to, then you have another thing coming. What about the mountainous regions? Must be great living up there in them mountains. Colorado, British Columbia, Alberta, places like that. Sure. But of course, you have the accessibility issue. You have the issue of the cold weather. It gets very cold in the mountains for most of the year. Very hard to grow crops in the mountains unless you're in a mountain grassland transitional zone. It's also going to be prone to wildfires once again. And of course, you're going to be very isolated from the rest of the world. You could probably get yourself some land up there for a decent price, but good luck paving roads through those mountains on the cheap. It's going to be a hard thing to do, and without some sort of government subsidy or support, it's going to be hard for you to afford, getting your retreat in the woods, in the mountains. Well, hell, why don't we just move to the Arctic? We can do ice fishing. It's isolated. It's far away from the human threats of the world. We can eat musk oxen, live like the Inuit live for thousands of years. Sure, but chances are most of us are going to freeze to death, and most of us are going to get sick of eating seal blubber after probably 3 or 4 days, to be honest. In addition to that, our physiology is simply not adapted to that environment. Your genetics is another thing to consider as well, and I've done an extensive video on this topic. I'll post a link up here in the corner. And basically, if you are a person who grew up in sub-Saharan Africa and you have all the genetic traits which are adapted to that environment, and you try to move up to the Arctic to survive, where the Inuit have adapted physiology of brown fat cells and the different types of physical features in order to endure that environment, then you're going to be SOL. Now, I don't think this is going to be a major factor for most people. I think your ability to adapt and the skills that you have are going to be able to compensate for any sort of physiological disadvantages you might have that aren't compatible with the environment that you're in. But just one more thing for you to consider. So what about the grasslands? What about the Great Plains, the savannas of Africa, or the Great Plains of North America? They must be an ideal place to bug out to. You have a generally, a moderately long growing season, long enough to supply grain to the better part of the world. Farming is going to be a great option. You're going to be able to have a lot of livestock. In the transitional zones where the prairies meet the forest, you're also going to have some hunting opportunities. You're going to have some cover. You're going to have some firewood, which you're going to need in order to stay warm throughout the winter time, because that's the one downside of the grasslands, is that there's very few tree stands, and particularly when you get into the real flatlands, which comprise a better part of the Midwest, without buffalo turds to burn to keep you warm throughout the winter, you ain't gonna survive. And newsflash, there ain't no buffalo left. In addition to this, there's not much cover, and in practical terms, there ain't much opportunities. So unless you are already a millionaire who has money in the bank and doesn't really care about continuing to make money, or maybe you're an internet superstar and you're making money drop shipping or something like that, where you don't need to have a physical location for your business, then sure, you might be able to pull off living in the smack dab in the middle of the Great Plains, where the population density is incredibly low, but you may just want to avoid some of the northern grasslands in the United States where all of the missile silos are located, because in World War III scenario, those are going to be one of the first things to go. That's another thing to keep in mind if you're planning on moving to a densely populated area, is going to be fallout from the nuclear reactors. Okay, so how about this? How about you just move to the jungle? South America, you could live like a tribal person and all the rest. Well, that's all great because you got lots of abundant resources. You have, of course, a very lush climate, which is going to be warm year-round until you get bitten by one of the 1,000 poisonous things there, and you don't have any natural antidotes. You don't have any natural knowledge of the environment, and heaven forbid you come across some drug cartel in the process of setting up your beautiful homestead in the woods. So the learning curve there is going to be off the charts. But what I'm trying to say is that there's compromises no matter where you go. So there really is no ideal place. Whether you're in the remote regions of Alaska where the hunting is great and you can live like a wild man, or while you're on a tropical island paradise for 8 months out of the year and battling hurricanes for the other 4 months, there's pros and cons to everything. And it's important to recognize that the safest locations are also the ones that are least economically feasible. Because let's face it, your family is not going to want to be uprooted from their school, from their lives in the cities where they have access to all of the things that cities bring, to all the activities, the social activities or recreational activities, just to remain safe for the off chance that there might be some major global calamity someday, which in our lifetime may never come to pass. Now, I'm pretty sure something major is going to happen, but that said, it's still kind of a gamble to do that. And the reality is, if you want to generate wealth, you're not going to generate wealth in the middle of the desert. It's not called the middle of the desert stock exchange. It's called the New York Stock Exchange. So that's why there's so many people in the East Coast, because that's where money is made. Now, the reason why I'm making this video is because this year I plan on scoping out some off-grid properties and hopefully purchasing one of them that's going to suit my needs. Now, I'm not quite sure yet if I'm just going to be purchasing land and then building on that land, or if I'm going to be buying like a pre-made acreage or something like that, which of course is a lot less work. Let's face it, it's a lot of work to build something from scratch. It's a 5 to 10 year investment of time, realistically, to do it right. And not everybody has the time and resources to do that. Here's a few more things to consider if you are planning on building a retreat for a long-term grid down situation. So one I've already mentioned, and that's your proximity to nuclear power plants or to densely populated areas, which would be targets in a nuclear strike World War III scenario. Now, Joel goes over this in his book on strategic relocation, and it's not very hard to induce which areas would be targets. Basically, any place where there's a missile silo, any places where there's primary resources available, primary government facilities, military bases, very densely populated areas, things of that nature would likely be targets of a nuclear attack. That's kind of the old school thinking, though. Now, with this whole electromagnetic pulse hacking thing, some people say that, in order for an invading country to preserve the infrastructure, they might not drop as many nukes as, we would think, viewing it from the lens of the old school scorched earth perspective. There are military strategists who are planning ways to win a World War III scenario without the scorched earth policy or the mutually assured destruction scenario ensuing. It is possible theoretically, although it would be very hard to pull off. Another thing to consider is your proximity to prisons, federal prisons, state prisons. If you're very close to those, of course, if the grid ever went down, a lot of people think that they're just going to be putting prisoners down and gassing them or something like that. But, there's a lot of other theories with regards to that as well. All it takes is a little bit of time for prisoners to get out of their cells unguarded. And if you have time and you have a bit of running water, chances are prisoners are going to get out even if left to their own devices. So that's a potential human threat right there. Indeed, population density is an issue. But one thing I want to say about population density is that if you have a very tight-knit community of people who are very well trained and your location is very defensible, I don't think it matters too much if you are very close to a very high population area, because you're going to be able to defend that property. And chances are the waves of people who come at you aren't going to be that organized. Even if there is, waves of refugees, are they going to be organized enough to, defeat you? You could be overwhelmed by sheer numbers, by attrition. You could be diminished. But like I say, in certain special scenarios, it may actually be quite feasible to have a very tight-knit community only 25 miles outside of a densely populated region, so long as it's off the beaten path, maybe down some secondary, tertiary roads where it'd be very hard for people to come across. It is potentially possible. Another thing you're going to want to consider, and more so in certain places than others, is of course the ability to have water. Any property that I'm going to invest in has to have access to water in some way, shape, or form. Now in Canada, the whole place is pretty much a frickin' swamp for the most part, so there's groundwater everywhere. It's not hard to find water, and of course there's lakes everywhere. So that's going to be number one. Of course, you're going to want some hunting opportunities. For me, I think an ideal spot to lay anchor would be in some transitional zone between a forest and a grassland, where you had the capability to grow grains and grasses, but you also had some forested region, not only for cover and for firewood, but you also had the ability to hunt, more hunting opportunities in those regions. You'll definitely want to avoid major highways as indicated. Try to get off the beaten path. Now, there's been many examples throughout history where, you know, when refugees are evacuating a place, they tend to stay on the main roads. So if you're off on a secondary road, you certainly don't want a house which is on a main highway anywhere, because that's going to be one of the prime targets when people's cars break down. Ideally, you would be off on a secondary highway, and even better would be to be off on a tertiary highway where, you know, chances are not a lot of people are going to be driving through there unless you're a local, or, you know, you're somebody who has some familiarity with that region, which is going to be few people and far in between. Another thing you're going to want to keep in mind is weather anomalies. No matter where you go, there's going to be crazy weather. Whether you're in Tornado Alley, or you're in the hurricane neck of the woods, or you're in wildfire country, or you're in the places where they get hit hard with the nor'easters and the blizzards. Perhaps you're just in, you know, where I'm in, where it's freaking cold as hell for 6 months out of the year. Or you're in the deep south of the desert, where you have very, very high temperatures, which of course can kill you. So an ideal piece of land for me would have to be at least 80 acres. And the feasibility of building a community 25 miles outside of a densely populated region is far more economically feasible, because it's closer to civilization, and therefore it's not going to be a huge monetary commitment for everybody, because you could still have 1 foot in the door of civilization and 1 foot in the door of the backwood. Nobody is going to want to live like a total backwoods shut-in. That's going to get boring pretty quick, especially if you don't have YouTube to keep your mind occupied. Let's face it, very few of us are Dick Pronicki. So for me, some of the ideal things I'm looking for, like I said, boreal transition zone, grassland, forest. I want something which is off on a secondary or a tertiary highway, ideally something which is within 45 minutes of a major urban center, because I'm going to want those amenities. I may want to have a job in the city. I'm going to want my kids to be able to partake in that part of the world. I don't want them to be isolated from the rest of the world and, you know, be these people who have absolutely no street smarts whatsoever. I'm going to want something which is relatively secluded. There's going to be a lot of natural resources. There's going to be a moderate water table, so I'm going to be able to have an aquifer. Maybe I'll even have a little bit of water on my property. The ability to have a bit of pasture if I wanted to have some cows or sheep or something to that effect. And of course, something which is defendable and affordable. Now, hopefully by the end of the year, I'll have laid anchor in my off-grid paradise. But I could really use your help in terms of trying to decide where one of the ideal places to live would be, particularly in Canada, within these criteria I've just laid out. And of course, if there's things that I haven't mentioned yet that you think I should give consideration to, please indicate that in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, please help me out by sharing it, liking, commenting, subscribing, all that good stuff. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out. The best way to support this YouTube channel is to support yourself by gearing up through CanadianPreparedness.com or bugoutroll.ca. premium quality gear at the best possible price using the incredibly secure and easy to use Shopify platform. We offer free shipping to the United States for orders over $200 USD and free shipping to Canada over $75. So support the channel by supporting yourself.